USC heads to Seattle to face fourth-ranked Washington.
Far left side of the field for the end zone. Jump ball, Darius Rogers. Touchdown, USC.
Coverage begins Saturday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
We have a lot to get to today. Ric Flair going to join us after drubbing Colin Cowherd. Did Ric Flair have a signature move in his career? Did he have, forgive my ignorance on this.
Are you kidding? A signature move? Signature moves. Wow. Obviously, the devastating figure four. Also, the time where you throw him into the turnbuckle and he flips over and he starts running across the apron, and it always ends in a clothesline. Also, the time that he goes up to the top turnbuckle to do God knows what, because he's only nailed the move one time. He always gets body slammed. Also, referee's not looking. Hit the groin. Just hit the groin. Hit the groin.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Also, when you beat him up a little bit and he's up against the turnbuckles, and then like he's like, oh man, that really hurt. Couple steps, I'm all right. Fall on your face.
Ooh. Okay, yeah.
Oh, the eye poke, dirtiest player in the game.
Yes.
Also, he always had brass knucks in his trunks. Always had brass knucks in his trunks. So he would take him out when the referee, the referee's never looking. You know what his nickname is, other than the Nature Boy? Dirtiest player in the game. The ref's got to get on that.
You've been a ref, man. You didn't even know this guy.
All right. So anyway, Ric Flair did all of those things to Colin Cowherd is what I was going to say. I just wanted one move.
So you had several, right?
I just wanted to say Ric Flair put Colin Cowherd in the figure four leg lock. And half of those moves aren't even moves. They're just him taking punishment. How is that a move? Ric Flair taking several steps and then falling on his face.
And one's a prop. I mean, so you're right. I'm with you. The figure four is the signature move. Right?
Okay, fine. Anyway, he beat Colin Cowherd, and he's coming back today. We got Tom Haberstroh. We got a number of different things.
There was one time I saw Ric Flair walk down the apron, down the stairs, onto the outside by the entrance ramp, and then he fell down on his face. It was a very delayed reaction.
Yes, I always enjoyed when he did that. We're trying to get some Stan Van Gundy sound cleared. I talked to him some last night. He's calling himself embarrassed and ashamed because he didn't speak out sooner. He didn't say anything sooner. He feels, I don't know how much of this I can say or should say, but he's very hard on himself, and he feels like a coward for not saying anything earlier. And so, among other things that he said yesterday, is he called Donald Trump brazenly racist and misogynistic. And as I said, Stan can be very hard on himself. So it's a too little, too late thing. Not that he could have done anything for anybody by saying it earlier, because all of the polling, not that you can trust any of that, but all of the polling suggests that people had their minds made up on this election a month ago. So the FBI reopening an investigation on one candidate didn't change anything, and the Billy Bush scandal, grab him by the bleep, didn't change anything.
There's a lot of things a couple of things that regardless of what Stan or anyone said, they weren't going to change. One, the people who were voting for Trump, they were voting for Trump regardless. And there were just a lot of Democrats who were not going to go and vote for Hillary Clinton. And that's it. And nothing would have changed that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that the only thing that Stan Van Gundy would have actually accomplished by saying all of these things earlier is he would have had a clear conscience that would have made him feel good about himself. And he didn't do it until afterward yesterday when he was on the bus and he saw that his players looked down. He thought they were down about a loss, and he just saw that his players, many of them felt like the country hates them.
Guys, I made a tremendous mistake earlier in the segment.
The chest slap.
I forgot the woo chops. I forgot the woo chops.
Yeah.
That is on me.
It's all right. Don't worry.
Forgive me.
It's a crazy time.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Okay. Moving parts.
It's a crazy time. So what I wanted to start with, though, before we got derailed with Ric Flair talk I wasn't expecting, is what just happened in the studio, because we like to be transparent, and we are very good at awkward. We're exceptional at it. No, now it's too late, Mike. It's too late. Like, you shared it with me, and when you share it with me, it gets on air because we are a transparent radio show. Our popularity, such that it is because all of our stuff gets aired out in public without any consideration of how people are going to feel about it.
You damned leaky faucet.
I know.
Don't do this.
Well, here's what happened. I want to give people the backstory.
Mike actually thought it's just the things that I said that gets put out on the air. It's any one of us.
No, Mike thinks this whole show is about doing Ric Flair dances and but it's not. Sometimes it's about the producer has to walk 10 steps outside of the studio and fall on his face. So we had a band in here, or a couple of members of a band during the local hour of the show. Animal Collective, Panda Bear and Geologist were here, and I don't know their music. That doesn't mean anything. I'm not a music aficionado. That's no indictment of them. But they're performing here in Miami. They're going to be at the Fillmore. And for some weird reason, I would say they like our show, which I can't imagine that we're very popular with bands. But I'm always surprised when a Billy Corgan or somebody from music, Billy Bob Thornton, even though he's from music.
He is
from music.
He's from music.
Certainly is.
I'm always surprised when they like what it is that we do. Who was the guy who came in here, Mike, that you, the lead
Paul
singer?
Banks from Interpol.
Yeah, Paul Banks.
Yeah. In fact, there's a decent popular reggae band out of the West Coast, Iration. They messaged me saying, "Oh, thank you for playing our music. We'd love to send you some shirts." So we have a weird show, though.
Well, but not only do we have a weird show, I don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
Right. So when Paul Banks comes in here, he's apparently whatever. We're not really making rock stars anymore, but he's kind of an important music person. And so we interviewed him for an hour. I don't know anything about him. He's a guy who walked in with his laundry. He sits down. I don't know a thing about him. And I'm just like, okay, this interview technique will be, let me be curious. And so what just happened is these guys were sitting in with us, and after an hour, Mike kicked them out. Right?
Which is really painful for myself because I'm the only person that knows Animal Collective and is actually like a huge fan of Panda Bear. Like, massive.
Which one of those was Panda Bear? Was it the guy with the beard or the other guy?
Beardless.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Panda Bear.
Yeah.
All right. So
I mean, just to put this in perspective, everybody knows who Daft Punk is, right? They don't just collaborate with anybody. They collaborated with Panda Bear on their album of the year. Yeah. It's a big deal. Geologist, I don't believe worked with Daft Punk.
Okay, but how bad did you feel about having to kick them
Terrible.
out
I'm so bad at it. Now, in my defense,
Wait a minute. Why is Guillermo?
It was because he saw the whole thing
What happened?
unfold.
Wait, I don't want to hear. Wait a
sweating.
minute. I don't want to hear your perspective on this.
Guillermo saw it and didn't have to do it.
Okay, I don't want to hear. I want to hear Guillermo's. I want to hear about this through Guillermo's eyes.
So as soon as the local hour ended, Mike was kind of like, well, we have some other people coming up here, so it's very limited space. It's a little crowded in here, so it's a little awkward, but I'm going to have to walk you down at some point. And they didn't really seem to be getting the hint that he meant now was the point.
Yeah,
that they're
they
gonna
stayed
walk
sitting down.
Yeah, so they're just like, okay. They stayed sitting there, and Mike's like, Allison, why don't you get them some shirts? And they're just like, okay, thanks. Yeah, we'd love some shirts. They just stayed sitting there. And then eventually I think Mike was just like, get the hell out of here.
Come on, you jerk. No, but my favorite part about all of that was when Dan asked immediately after that crazy awkward, because it was awkward.
Well, but I didn't know what was happening, okay? Like, don't blame that. How dare you?
No, I'm not blaming you. I am not blaming
I
you.
mean, next time, just kick him the hell out, Mike.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, come on.
There he is.
No, because I hate that
There he
guy.
is.
Like, you have a party at your house, and you're trying to, give all the signals that the party's ending, and there's two guys just sitting there still drinking your alcohol on the couch watching the college football game. Like, get out of my house.
That is the worst.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the worst.
It's the worst.
You
Take
have
a
people
hint.
over for Christmas, whatever, and it's like, guys, I've been seeing you for 2 days. Like, I don't need to see you anymore. We exchange presents. Like, birthdays, you blow out the candles. After the cake, it's time to leave, all right? The cake is the sign. Time to go. Don't stay here. Go away.
What is happening here? Hold on a second. What? Are lingering guests the worst? Put it on the poll there. Put it on the corporate sponsor poll at Batard
This
Show.
is going to look so bad. They're fans of the show. They're going to hear all of this.
They're going to hear all of this, but that's fine. We're not being disrespectful. We're just being, as we always are, awkward.
Poll is brought to you by JCPenney. Hurry into JCPenney for Black Friday deals early when you use your 20% off with your JCPenney credit card on select items throughout the store. That's getting your pennies worth, JCPenney.
All right, so my favorite part about all this, and by favorite, I mean least favorite and most painful part, was after I go through an entire awkward session of letting these people know subtly and then not so subtly that they had to go, and I'm getting shirts, and I'm trying to basically move them with, like, sheer force, like, outside the studio. Dan goes, "Hey, where you guys going? Hey, why don't you guys stick around for a little bit? You want a picture? Why don't you stick around? What's going on? Why are you guys leaving?"
That's the time I chose to be social.
that time.
As they're leaving.
Which you were so nice to them, and I
was being
appreciate
nice.
it.
I was being nice because they mattered to you, and I hate that stuff, all of it.
Dude, when Paul Banks came in here, I knew you knew nothing about Interpol or Paul Banks, and you just knew that I was a big fan, and you guys stayed till like 8 o'clock at night talking to Paul Banks for me, and you guys did a hell of an interview on the South Beach session. And you did that for me, basically. You did that just for me. So you were being super nice there. It's just the timing of it did not help.
I wasn't actually telling them to stay. I was saying, hey, come over here and take a picture, and we'll take a picture. But they didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay.
No, and to make things worse, I was like, because, like, if I had it my way, I'd have them stay because I think it's cool. Animal Collective's in here, but they're in the shot, right? So, like, that would be weird for audiences to see Animal Collective. But this is the best part about the story, because I'm like, I don't want to anger the people in D.C. at all. Like, there's these people that they probably don't know. Animal Collective sitting in the studio. So as we're taking the picture, Bill in D.C. is like, hey, I want to talk to them. I'm like, Bill's our director. I'm like thinking he thinks there's the auction winners. I'm going to have to explain this whole thing. No. Bill's like, hey, Panda Bear, big fan. What did you say? Yeah.
Bill, the stoic director. Wait a minute, that's a stunner.
That just makes me look even worse because I was partly doing this for Bill over there.
Wait, Mike, call them back. I want them to just sit there behind you. Call them back and ask them. Tell them we now need them. I want them to just sit there behind you. Tell them we need their help.
The remainder of the show?
I mean, whatever. Just for
as long as they want.
If they want to come back, they'll sort of be a part of the show by just being behind Mike. Go ahead. All right, let's see how this works out.
Because this isn't going to be awkward for me either.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. In November, Progressive will give away over 100 vehicles to veterans in need as part of its Keys to Progress program, giving thanks for the freedom they've given us. To learn more, go to progressive.com/Keys to Progress. Tune in for college football action tonight as North Carolina takes on Duke, presented by Dr. Pepper. Coverage begins at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNradio.com, and the ESPN app. Here's your SportsCenter update. Week 10 in the NFL kicks off tonight. Thursday Night Football, Browns and Ravens, 8:25 kickoff from Baltimore. College football, Alabama head coach Nick Saban had no idea that Monday was Election Day. Teams are clawing for a spot in the playoffs, so don't settle for your living room. Head to Buffalo Wild Wings, where they do it for you with wall-to-wall TVs and a new menu that includes new, juicy, handcrafted burgers. Buffalo Wild Wings, wings, beer, sports. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in the SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
It is Dan and Stu from the Clevelander in South Beach on ESPN Radio.
Catch me and Mike Golick Jr. every Sunday for weekend observations from 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. The Dan Le Batard Show is brought to you by the Home Depot, a proud sponsor of the College Game Day Tour, live this Saturday from Seattle as USC takes on Washington. The Home Depot, the next generation of home improvement, with everything you need to do projects smarter. The Home Depot, more saving, more doing.
All right, so Mike called these guys back, and they're coming back. What happened? How awkward was that conversation?
Well, I was trying to reach them, and then we got back in the show, so Allison handed it over, and as always, Allison comes through. So I don't know how awkward it is. We'll find out how awkward it is when they come back in about 20 minutes.
All right, they're just going to sit behind you on ESPNU. That's fine.
Kind of odd, right? Like once you've been kicked out of a party or a house or a visit, then you get a call, and like kind of odd to come back, right?
Yeah, well, all of it's awkward, but I want to ask, that was Panda Bear with Daft Punk, by the way, but I want to ask Panda Bear, like, how clumsy that all was for him. Did they feel hurt, wounded by that? We were talking during the break. Thank you for all of you who gently wrote in to remind us that Election Day was Tuesday and not Monday. You did that so kindly. You didn't bury Stugotz at all or claw his eyes out.
It's amazing.
You are right. Election Day was Tuesday. We are sorry that Stugotz said it was Monday. But we were having a conversation during the break, and Mike Ryan was talking about someone, and I didn't hear. I only caught a portion of this conversation. Someone who called the police on his own house party in order to get the guests to leave. And then Fats and Info said, yeah, I've done that. I've totally done that.
Yeah, my senior year of high school, my parents were away. I had the whole school. I was like feeling all cool, like you guys are all coming over. I'm like, I'm just going to keep it in the kitchen, the backyard, and my living area. By like 9:30, every single space in my house, room, every room.
Well, I remember that because, you know why I remember that? Because your father's Greg Cody, and he didn't trust you, and he had the neighbors watching you, and you were never supposed to have that party.
That's accurate.
I know. I remember how mad he was. Like, he was beside himself with fury that you guys did that. It's as angry as I've ever seen your father, because he knew you were going to do that, and he didn't want you to do it. He didn't trust you, but he allowed you to have the party, and then the moment he leaves, you have a party that you have to call the police to have extinguished.
Have you ever had to do that, like in an attempt to get guests out of your apartment? I've done it so many times. I've tried, just about every trick. I've never called the cops. Probably would have done that when I was younger if I needed to, but I've turned we're in South Florida. I've turned the air up as high as I could, meaning making the house as hot as humanly possible, and
Wow,
people still don't take the hint. Yeah.
Like, you have an assortment of tricks?
Oh, yeah. Yep. 95-degree day, middle of the summer, I will crank up the heat, and people will still stay there. I'm telling you, people want to sit in your house and don't want to budge. They won't budge. Like, I have two people in my life that simply will not budge. They won't budge. One is my uncle. I mean, it doesn't matter what I do. He will sit there until I go to sleep. Even after I go to sleep, he will never, ever leave, and I've tried every single trick that I have.
A texter writes in, my father is known as a bleepity bleep because at every family party, as soon as he's over it, he'll loudly yell, everyone get the bleep out of my house. That's probably the best way to handle it, honestly.
That's a good move.
Like, that's fine. You take the stigma, you take the label of I'm the jerk who kicks everybody out, but you will have no lingerers under those circumstances if you're willing to be the jerk. And we were talking during the local hour of the show, 9 to 10 every day on 790 The Ticket here in Miami. We were talking about likability. We were talking about the things that Stan Van Gundy said, and we were talking about how odd it is that white women voted for Donald Trump, even though it's hard to dispute that he's guilty of misogynistic behavior. And we were talking about the weird relationship that America has with women, loves them, hates them. There's some self-loathing involved there that I don't really understand when white women are voting for or against Hillary Clinton. And I guess we were talking about likability, that Hillary Clinton isn't very likable. And what are the ingredients to likability? If you're the guy who yells, everybody get the bleep out of my house to lingering guests, you're not going to be likable. Likability isn't important to you. What's important to you is getting everybody the hell out of your house. And so we've got up on the poll here, who's more likable, Stugotz or me? Because I don't care about likability, and Stugotz does. And we were just talking about how elusive, who is the most likable person in sports right now? How elusive that is. You have to play. One of the reasons that Jose Fernandez's death was so hard on South Florida is because he played with a joy that was infectious and made him likable because you enjoyed yourself more in his company. But what is likable? Is it life of a party? Like what? Not image crafter, not the guys like Jeter and Jordan and Brady who don't say anything and allow their excellence to speak for them.
I would say Big Papi is a good example of universally beloved outside of the obvious, Yankee fans out there. I think Gronk is working his way up there too because he's authentic.
That's an interesting one. So what are the keys to likability? Because
being genuine, I'd say.
I know, but I do feel like we all know that if Cam Newton was behaving exactly the same way that Gronk was, it would not be viewed as the same kind of likable.
You're absolutely right. Charles Barkley is genuine and was genuine during his playing days, and he was hated during his playing days, and now people like him.
He was polarizing during his playing days. Well, that one's always an interesting one. Wentz, Allen Iverson, and Randy Moss and all these guys who become likable once they stop being a threat to your sportsmanship or your ideas of utopian sports Pleasantville. Allen Iverson, after his playing days, a lot more liked than Allen Iverson during his playing days. Same things with Randy Moss, and they were authentic. But keeping it real doesn't work the same. Authentic, this one's complicated, right? Because authentic does work for Gronk, but keeping it real doesn't always work for the black guy. So the keys to likability would Big Papi get your vote on most likable athlete? Most likable athlete anywhere in sports, and he's retired now, so who's next if he is the guy? Because it's a super elusive quality. I do think, though, you buy yourself a lot by being a joyful player. Someone who is the verb to play.
Right.
If you're someone who is clearly enjoying his work.
Yeah, that's certainly one characteristic. Is Steph Curry a guy that's likable?
Not anymore, I don't think. I think he was working his way up that ladder, but their run last year, and Draymond doesn't help them at all, and he got a little cocky there too, and the fact that they choked doesn't help, and now that they formed this mega team, but I thought he was well on his way.
The Cam Newton stuff is interesting, right? Because there is no disputing that if I say someone who enjoys his work, Cam Newton, you've seen the photographs of him coming up to the line of scrimmage smiling before taking the snap.
Mm-hmm.
He enjoys while he's playing, but somehow that morphs into Cam Newton and morphs into showboating arrogance that we need to throw penalties at instead of enjoying his work.
Well, is being relatable probably a big key to being liked?
That helps.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Cam Newton is he does a Superman thing. People react poorly towards it, but after he does a Superman thing, he hands a football to a kid wearing his jersey every time.
No, the way Cam Newton is viewed is funny.
I'll slap you in the face with money.
Even while delivering 5-alarm, third-degree burn-worthy hot takes, Stugotz can lean back and put his feet on the table because of just how comfortable he is in his pair of Tommy John underwear. Tell him, God.
Yep, we love it. Tommy John combines patented, breathable fabrics with innovative design to hold everything together softly yet securely, and it never rides up, and that's the key. Plus, it's backed by the best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. Tommy John, no adjustment needed. Save 20% off on your first order with code Miami right now at TommyJohn.com. That's Miami for 20% off at TommyJohn.com.
More of Dan and Stu coming up on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. The Dan Le Batard Show is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Guest on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Here's your SportsCenter update. Week 10 in the NFL kicks off tonight. Thursday Night Football, Browns and Ravens, 8:25 p.m. Eastern from Baltimore. College football, Alabama head coach Nick Saban had no idea Tuesday was Election Day. And finally, a former Royal Canadian Mint employee has been found guilty of smuggling $165,000 worth of gold from the building, apparently in his humph. I think I did that right. This Sports Center is brought to you by JCPenney. Beat the rush at JCPenney and get amazing Black Friday deals early when you use your 20% off with your JCPenney credit card on select items throughout the store. That's getting your pennies worth, JCPenney. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to Sports Center on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
This has triggered a flammable conversation all over the place because everything we do around here starts fights. And so now many of you are arguing about whether Cam Newton is or isn't likable. And now what's happening is some people are writing in, you have to be authentic and fun and not angry. And I would just say to you that angry tends to be something that we hit black people with more than we hit white people with, generally speaking. And I don't want to get into this conversation, but what I'm telling you is that if Cam Newton were to behave the way Gronk does and write books about cooking scrambled eggs naked while women were slipping and sliding nude through his apartment, that probably wouldn't go over quite the same way. So, moving on. If I were to say to you, this is fairly amazing. We've got some Stan Van Gundy sound for you from the Detroit Free Press. Nobody in sports has come out stronger on what just happened in the elections than Stan Van Gundy. But if I were to say to you, I marveled at a lot of things that happened on Election Tuesday. But right at the top of the list is this. If I had said to you a year ago, let's say 2 years ago, that we were doing a show, and I were to have asked you this question, you can choose from anyone in the world anyone in the public eye, anyone in celebrity, who's the most disconnected in the world from the working class? Everyone to pick from in the world. Who's got the least in common with the working class? It'd probably be the guy who's famous for being rich. And if it's probably the guy who's famous for being rich, it's probably Donald Trump. That's amazing when you think about it. That if I gave you 2 years ago, before any of this started, if I gave you a fictional scenario and said, choose anyone you want. Nobody's running for president. I'm not giving you any other information. Just who's less a man of the people, of the working class.
Without really a rags to riches story to lean on and say I was a part of the working class. It came from money.
But what I'm saying is, you associate, Trump is famous for being wealthy.
Of course.
For being New York, he's basically a real estate agent who became famous because he did it big in New York. But there's so many amazing things here. But I'm telling you, he would have won. If we put it up and just ask people to do a word association, fill in the blank. Who's the person in America who's got the least in common with the working class? People would have selected Bill Gates and other wealthy people.
The Kardashians.
The working class?
Certainly more in common than Trump, though. Certainly. That's just another level of celebrity that, they can't relate to working class people because their lives are just flatly absurd. But Trump's got, we're talking about wealth here, and daily lives of the working class citizen.
He is famous for being wealthy. That's where his fame started. And so there are a number of amazing things here. That's one of them. Before we get to the Stan Van Gundy sound, though, Ric Flair is going to join us later in the show. Tom Haberstroh is going to join us. Dr. Alan Lichtman is going to join us. He's going to explain to me some of the things from this week that I don't understand in terms of data and how it is that all the polls could get this wrong. But Stan Van Gundy came out. Who's second place in terms of in sports coming out as strongly saying the things that Stan Van Gundy said yesterday?
Steve Kerr is second place now.
Okay. And he came out like this? Because
No. Well, there's a reason why he's second place. It's similar. He came out sort of like this, but Stan, scorched earth.
Okay. The sound, and again, I don't know how much of it. I'm in too deep at this point because I was talking to Stan last night. But he is embarrassed and ashamed of himself. He's being really hard on himself that he didn't say any of this earlier.
I do love how he did it, though. Listen, he did say what he lent a voice to what a lot of people were thinking, and so. But I do like how he did it, where he came in and said, "No questions about the game. Period. Let's go." I got to get this off my chest. No questions about the game.
He's been struggling with this for a while because, this has been an issue in his locker room since the Kaepernick stuff started. But not related to Trump. It's just hard when he's the president in power. He's the coach in power. What do you do with one of these players when you have a deep human relationship and connection with these players? What do you do when they're coming to you as the power broker and asking you, what happens if I kneel during the national anthem? As a caring individual, as someone who cares about people and as someone who cares about specifically these people, his employees, what do you do when you're in the position of power and they're asking for your advice? Because these are human relationships and these are young people. I don't know. He's been struggling with all of this for a while, so we'll play some of that sound for you next.
Coming up, more of the Dan Le Batard Show on ESPN Radio.
This is Larry Culpepper, and if you love college football as much as I do, enough to invent the playoff, you're welcome. Do yourself a favor and subscribe to the Championship Drive podcast in the Listen tab of your ESPN app. App is short for app.
I'm Andy Katz from ESPN, along with my co-host Seth Greenberg. On Courtside with Katz and Coach G, we'll be joined by Arizona head coach Sean Miller and Indiana head coach Tom Crean in advance of the Armed Forces Classic in Honolulu.
The North Carolina Tar Heels head to Durham to face their fiercest rivals, the Duke Blue Devils. Touchdown! Coverage begins Thursday at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio. Presented by Dr. Pepper.